Surrender! Death first!
Will you promise not to hurt him? If we surrender and I return with you, will you promise not to hurt this man?
I swear it will be done.
Has a movie line ever stuck with you to the point where it became a part of everyday speech? So, for example, there's The Princess Bride. Not only is the narrative well known, but so are the memorable lines, some of which were delivered impromptu by the show's brilliant performers. By the way, which lines have gone down in antiquity? Can you think of any great improvised moments that you might not be familiar with? We should immediately determine. Cary Elwes was in Berlin filming Mashenka, a romantic drama adapted from Vladimir Nabokov's novel in 1987, when the chance to produce The Princess Bride presented itself. The Chernobyl nuclear tragedy had happened the year before, and Europe was still recovering from its effects. The casting call for Wesley came when Elwes was debating whether to go to London to meet with Rob Reiner, the film's director. Apparently, Elwes made his decision on the spur of the moment. Reiner cautioned Elwes, "Don't go if you don't feel safe." But Elwes nevertheless left Berlin for the audition. He remembered hurriedly making his way to the hotel, as if it would protect him from the radiation. He was so scared that he even forgot his $11,000 coat. "I am unable to wear it any longer. I am not wealthy and I do not own many expensive coats," he stated. However, it was well worth the journey. Elwes didn't put up a conventional performance during the audition. Instead of memorizing his lines, he brought joy to Rob Reiner by mimicking the voice of Bill Cosby's iconic cartoon character, Fat Albert. The director was looking for an actor with good looks and an inherent sense of comedy, so this struck his eye right away. Within the first few phrases of Elwes's scripted monologue, Reiner and the filmmakers realized he was the ideal choice. Elwes gave Wesley just the proper amount of charisma, humor, and depth of character that he required. Everyone in the audition room was won over by his phrase, which was full of sarcasm and passion. There were a lot of great contenders for the film's lead roles, but ultimately, just a short list of candidates was chosen. If events had unfolded differently, we may have seen Cary Elwes replaced by Colin Firth as Wesley, Vizzini by Danny DeVito instead of Wallace Shawn, Prince Humperdinck by Sting instead of Chris Sarandon, and Andre the Giant by Arnold Schwarzenegger as Fezzik. Specifically, Danny DeVito's portrayal of Vizzini offered a unique opportunity to reimagine the character. While Danny DeVito is famous for his sly sense of humor and fast wit, Wallace Shawn gave Vizzini an intellectual yet hilarious edge. The casting of Wallace Shawn as Vizzini did not convince him that he was the perfect choice. "I always felt like Rob Reiner was planning to fire me and bring in Danny DeVito to replace me," he recounted. He felt this way after learning that Richard Dreyfuss and Aito were the top two choices. While filming, he couldn't shake the idea that he was being superseded. Shawn escaped termination thankfully and went on to provide a spectacular performance, which included the iconic line, "Inconceivable." Became one of the film's most memorable lines. The Princess Bride and the film's scriptwriter, William Goldman, has another intriguing anecdote to share. Since Goldman had such high hopes for his book, he was understandably anxious about adapting it for the big screen. The production crew had to constantly warn him that his mumbling prayers would be picked up by the microphone when filming began. The Princess Bride overcame many obstacles and fears to become a landmark in the history of fantasy filmmaking. It has produced innumerable memorable phrases that are often cited even by those who do not enjoy the genre. The backstory of the film demonstrates how even the most iconic works may have taken a completely different turn with alternative choices. Thankfully, everything fell into place just so, and The Princess Bride is now a classic that will never go out of style. The ability to seamlessly blend spectacular action sequences with romantic comic moments is one of the many reasons why The Princess Bride has stood the test of time. The performers and crew endured a difficult and taxing procedure to bring those unforgettable sequences to life. The flaming swamp sequence, shot in the summer of 1986, was one of the most challenging parts. Due to its hazardous nature and unique technological demands, this scene proved to be rather a formidable obstacle. Cary Elwes's character Wesley rescues Robin Wright's character Buttercup from a roaring fire in a swamp. Elwes claimed the scenario was far more intricate than what the screenplay indicated. The scene was a little crazy, according to Elwes, who first couldn't fathom plunging that rapidly into a quicksand bog while clutching his nose to prevent asphyxiation. His argument was that heroes shouldn't plunge into quicksand with their feet first, particularly if they're clutching their noses. Nonetheless, Elwes was adamant about doing whatever it took to have the sequence shot because it was a pivotal point in the film. It was not simple to get ready for the scene. Even though he knew there was a high chance of harm, he opted to attempt the swamp leap after seeing a stuntman execute it. His initial foray into acting was an audacious on-screen leap, which Elwes now recognizes as an example of his courage. Jumping into the dangerous environment during the flaming marsh sequence needed Elwes to muster both physical and mental bravery. There were no big problems during filming, but little things like hot sand and the stress in the neighborhood because of the fire made the scenario much more challenging. The battle between Wesley and Inigo Montoya, played by Mandy Patinkin, was one of the most intense parts in The Princess Bride, right up there with the scorching marsh scene. The actors had to practice hard and execute flawlessly to pull off the ideal combat between the two roles. As soon as production began, Cary Elwes and Mandy Patinkin started preparing for this moment. It was a crucial sequence in the film, but it also demanded a high level of martial arts expertise, necessitating months of practice. According to Mandy Patinkin, he dedicated a significant amount of time to practicing with swords right from the start. In the meanwhile, Cary Elwes had to master the sword as well, despite his lack of prior training. They put in endless hours of rehearsal to perfect their performance, making sure that the audience would never suspect that they were acting. Despite initial plans to shoot the sequence in a single day, the battle ended up taking a full week to finish. Elwes and Patinkin had to practice intricate motions several times to get the fluidity and realism of the sword swings right on set. The outcome was a spectacular and fascinating battle, although it did lengthen the filming schedule. The significance of this sequence was not lost on either performer. They were well aware that even a small error may derail the flawless picture because of the script's emphasis on minute details. It was a test of determination and cunning, not merely a conflict between two individuals. According to Cary Elwes, the significance of the training and filming was magnified since the sequence was about more than just physical ability. It was also about the camaraderie and respect between the two characters. As a result, the battle scene in The Princess Bride was incredibly well choreographed and featured outstanding martial arts maneuvers. The procedure was difficult and time-consuming, but the end result was worth it for the producers and the audience. Both Cary Elwes and Mandy Patinkin look back on it as a career-defining experience. Among Elwes's most enchanted acting experiences was filming The Princess Bride. "It was as if I were immersed in an unforgettable film," he remarked. "The special thing about this film was that every scene was a challenge. The flaming marsh scene and the duel scene are evidence of the crew's devotion and hard work. All of the hard work, danger, and perseverance paid off with a film that audiences like and remember fondly even after all these years." Andre the Giant is more than just a gigantic figure in The Princess Bride. He is also crucial to the plot and requires viewers to commit lines of conversation to memory. Because of his towering stature and tremendous physique, he effortlessly steals the show in any scenario. Even though he was known for his professional wrestling background, Andre the Giant had a tough time learning his lines for this picture, which is something that few people know. Memorizing and speaking lengthy English lines was challenging for Andre, a natural French speaker. He was a joy to be around and brought a positive energy to the set. However, he had trouble acting in his second language. Even more daunting was the fact that he had to effectively and organically portray Fezzik's temperament and feelings in the conversation parts. Rob Reiner, the film's director, saw that Andre was struggling to commit his lines to memory and devised a clever and efficient solution. Reiner took the unusual step of recording all of Fezzik's lines and playing them back to Andre many times, rather than expecting him to rote memorize the screenplay. According to Reiner, Andre listened attentively, learned the lines, and acted them out when she recited them all. Andre eventually mastered the technique and began to naturally deliver his lines. He gained comfort in playing the eccentric character Fezzik and was able to learn his lines more easily with this technique. While watching the video, one gets the impression that Fezzik is a kind giant who is always willing to provide a hand to his pals. Even though English wasn't his strong point, Andre found performing in it to be a formidable task. Throughout filming, he listened non-stop on headphones and tape recorders to adjust to the long lines. He was able to practice his lines without continually pulling out the script because of this. Over time, he was able to commit each line and phrase to memory because to the relentless repetition. However, there were times when it was difficult. Andre would skulk around the set with his tape recorders and headphones, muttering along to Fezzik's lines, as the rest of the crew worked tirelessly to film. His incredible perseverance and commitment helped him become an essential character in the film. Not only did Andre help us overcome the language barrier, but he was also an excellent co-worker and friend. Andre was a comforting presence who could make even the most tense situations more bearable, according to co-stars Carrie Elwes, Wesley, Robin Wright, Buttercup, and Mandy Patinkin, Inigo Montoya. Even in the most dramatic situations, his charming anecdotes and humor managed to lighten the mood. The actress who portrays Inigo Montoya, Mandy Patinkin, reflected on how much pleasure it was to work with Andre. The easygoing vibe he imparted was something Patinkin spoke about. Andre had a knack of making everyone laugh and feel at ease, regardless of how challenging the filming situation was. Learning his lines was extremely difficult, yet he never gave up or seemed discouraged. He worked tirelessly on the part, and it became one of the most iconic in cinematic history. Even though he doesn't speak the language, Andre the Giant charmingly exemplifies the qualities associated with his physique: devotion, strength, and humor. The ability to empathize with a character is crucial for actors, but there are instances when a more personal connection makes all the difference. When Mandy Patinkin played Inigo Montoya in The Princess Bride, he embodied a character driven by vengeance and hell-bent on killing the guy responsible for his father's murder. Very few are aware that Patinkin has a very personal and emotional tale that lies underneath the intensity and passion she displays in this character. The cancer-related death of Mandy Patinkin's father in 1972 was a devastating blow to the family. It was an indelible emotional and psychological blow, a loss that ripped a gaping hole in his soul and refused to mend. He felt the same profound anguish as Inigo Montoya does after the death of his father because of this personal tragedy. Mandy hoped to find a way to reconcile with his absent father by playing Inigo Montoya, the role he played in The Princess Bride, and his fixation on vengeance. "If I could defeat the six-fingered guy and play the role of Inigo, I would regain my father's presence in my make-believe world." An explanation for his acceptance of the part was his belief that the character would come alive in his mind. While filming, Mandy's emotions toward Inigo were heavy and significant, going beyond a simple desire for vengeance. He says that returning to his father, even if just in his dreams, was more important to Inigo than completing the task or exacting retribution. He knew it was hopeless, yet it was a means to alleviate the anguish of loss nevertheless. Not only did Mandy Patinkin find relief in the job, but it also gave him the opportunity to feel profound emotions. After finishing the part, I recognized that it was a way for me to escape the grief over my father's death. Inigo Montoya and I shared that anguish, he revealed. Since it symbolizes Inigo's character change as well as Mandy's own emotional and perceptual development, this scene is his favorite in the film. After Inigo Montoya ends his torturous search for vengeance by killing the six-fingered guy, he is immediately confronted with a deep question: what comes after vengeance? After this, What's my next move? Philosophically, this is one of the most renowned lines in the film. Inigo's statement, "I don't know what to do with the rest of my life now that it's all over," reflects the pointlessness of living for retribution. Additionally, it symbolizes Patinkin's understanding that vengeance, no matter how many enemies he eliminates, would not return his father or bring about peace. Billy Crystal's portrayal of Miracle Max, despite his brief appearance in the film just over 5 minutes, is memorable and integral to the success of The Princess Bride. Because of his exceptional talent, which he developed at a young age and polished through years of stand-up comedy and SNL performances, the majority of his lines as Miracle Max were entirely improvised and unscripted. Jazz was the musical staple of Crystal's household as she grew up. His father had a record store and put on jazz performances in the neighborhood, while his uncle started Commodore Records, which was a major player in the jazz scene. From a young age, he was surrounded by jazz, which he used into his stand-up routines and improvisation. In the early stages of his stand-up comedy career, Crystal honed his skills in improvising and writing monologues without scripts. His comedic timing and storytelling prowess brought him fame in stand-up comedy and subsequently The Princess Bride. His performance as Miracle Max showcases the free-spirited jazz flair he brought to his improvisations. Billy Crystal's spontaneous delivery of phrases became defining of Miracle Max's character from the beginning of the program. To aid makeup artist Peter Montana in envisioning Max's appearance, he even brought pictures of his grandma and renowned baseball coach Casey Stengel, which were important in developing the character. It was his method of demonstrating his dogged imagination and careful planning. The production's most remarkable feature was undoubtedly Crystal's dogged improvisation on set. While filming for 3 days, at over 10 hours each day, Crystal made gags about the Middle Ages without rehearsing a word, according to Cary Elwes, Wesley. He showed off his acting chops and improvisational prowess by giving each sentence his own distinct and hilarious spin. Highlights starring Billy Crystal include his portrayal of Wesley in the scene where his death is assumed, his now famous comment about genuine love, and most notably, his hilarious aside on the sandwich with lamb, lettuce, and tomatoes. His charisma and the character's spontaneity were exquisitely showcased in these remarks, which were completely improvised. He had his co-stars in Miracle Max in stitches with his hilarious performance. They were so taken aback by his impromptu gags that filming almost stopped for a while. It was Cary Elwes who struggled the most to maintain a straight face among the performers. Elwes had to be replaced in many shots by a dummy because he couldn't control his laughter during the moment where Wesley was assumed dead. Crystal was just too amusing, and Elwes said afterwards that he couldn't maintain a straight face around her. Furthermore, Mandy Patinkin, Inigo Montoya, was likewise enchanted by Crystal's improvisations. He even hurt his ribs in one scene, which remained his sole physical injury throughout production. That Billy Crystal was an integral component of the picture due to his talent at controlling his emotions and bringing unexpected moments to life is evidence of the impact he had on the whole crew. Miracle Max was played well by Billy Crystal, but the role of Max's wife Valerie, played by Carol Kane, is just as noteworthy. Kane demonstrated that she was a talented actress capable of keeping up with Crystal's rapid-fire improvisations. Not only was she fantastic beside Crystal, but she also contributed to the development of an authentic husband and wife interaction on set. Their interactions gave joy and portrayed a charming, eccentric on-screen pair, creating the impression of a genuine, loving family for the viewers. An fascinating what-if scenario with an alternate ending that was suggested but never implemented for The Princess Bride. This alternate ending has the fairy tale heroes and heroines galloping away on 4 gray horses, beckoning the little boy to embark on a new adventure, as the story ends with him gazing out the window. The authors hoped this would provide a sense of continuity while also expanding the fantastical universe. The producers and director Rob Reiner were concerned that this series finale would be too confusing for viewers, despite the appealing notion. According to Reiner, if the child's actual world were blended with the fairy tale world, the story would have been less delicate and mysterious, causing the spectator to be pulled out of the dream world that the film had magnificently constructed. It would have been counterproductive to the film's bizarre elements to blur the boundary between fact and fantasy. The production team opted for the beloved and iconic finale instead, the moment where the child listens to his grandfather read aloud the whole story, which is loaded with legendary words about love, sacrifice, and adventure. In keeping with the spirit of nostalgia and the desire to keep the story going, this climax draws a line between reality and fantasy without alienating the audience. The finale of The Princess Bride, which features a grandpa and grandson sitting side by side, symbolizes a bond between generations and a profound message about the power of storytelling. With this conclusion, the film leaves the viewer with the impression of an incomplete story, one in which they might imagine a wonderful world free of limitations, rather than attaching the characters to reality. By going with this choice, the plot stays mysterious, transporting viewers to a world of fables and folklore where the resolution is never clear and the adventures go on in their minds. Aside from the romance and thrills, the film's narrative is what really makes it legendary, a plot that fans can't stop thinking about. It was the correct decision to forego the other ending, even though the filmmakers struggled to decide on one during production. The contemporary ending, in which the story is handed down through the years, keeps the film's allure and demonstrates how magical stories may endure in our minds. Thanks to its intriguing story and its unique combination of reality and fantasy, The Princess Bride has become a cultural touchstone and an audience favorite. The notion shows the endless search for the perfect tale, even if the alternate conclusion was never recorded. I want to know from The Princess Bride, which line do you like the most? Feel free to express your opinions.